Let's head back to the 2025 U.S. Canada Summit taking place in Toronto, hosted by BMO and Eurasia Group, attended by policymakers, entrepreneurs, but also leading CEOs who have operations in both countries. That includes the Canadian-based space company, MDA Space. Our own Lindsay Biscaya caught up with the MDA Space CEO, Mike Greenley, and began by asking him, give us a snapshot of the company.
MDA Space is a 55-year-old global space company headquartered in Canada. We excel in three big things. One is Earth and space observation satellites and their operation. The second is space-based robotics and rovers. And the third is communication satellites that provide broadband and direct-to-cell phone communication networks around the world from space.
Your company has been seeing a lot of growth over the last couple of years, recently signing a contract with Space Development Agency and the Department of National Defense. Tell us about that and how that's going to kind of elevate your company.
Yeah, so the work we do with the Department of National Defense in SDA is in space domain awareness. So that's in us providing observation of the satellites in orbit. It's very important as space becomes more and more congested to be able to keep track of all the satellites in space and provide those feeds into the defense departments. We operate a satellite called Sapphire for the Canadian Department of National Defense that provides data every minute into D&D and the U.S. Department of Defense for space situational awareness. This new contract uses ground-based radars, so great big dishes out in the middle of nowhere in the darkness, looking up into space to track all the satellites so that we can keep track of especially threat satellite activity. Increasingly, state actors from other countries, China, Russia, wherever, will be kind of moving around in space, getting too close to other satellites, and so all that needs to be tracked and managed every day in space.
You talk about how space is becoming more congested, right? I mean, can you talk a little bit more about the race and the competition there is around the globe in terms of being in space?
There's definitely significant competition. So significant competition comes these days for me in two key areas. One is in space-based communications, putting up networks so that countries and companies can have sovereign communications for data, bringing the internet to the world from space. And then the second is direct-to-device communications, 5G compliant cell phone communications from space. So there's tremendous competition globally to get networks up there and provide those services around the world, which are and will be in really high demand. The second area will be on the moon. So there's a race to the moon. That will be all about real estate and who gets the good spots and how are people going to live and operate on the moon and get access to resources. And so that's a slower race. It'll happen over many years here, but over the next 5 years, humans will start to return to the moon and start to live and work there. And that is a very significant race with the United States having partnerships with over 50 countries around the world to work together, and China having partnerships with over 12 countries around the world to work together as everyone charges towards the moon.
It sounds surreal to think about, but obviously companies are already focusing on this, but also national defense, right? You touched on this already. Canada has pledged to up its NATO defense spending from 2% to 5%. Yes. How is MDA Space involved in that?
Yeah, so the increase in defense spending is for a few things. One is for Canadian defense security and sovereignty, and the second is to increase Canada's allied relevant defense capabilities to contribute to allied operations. In areas such as Earth observation, space-based communications, infrastructure in terms of satellites that have proximity operations capabilities and robotics on them that allows you to protect satellites from other satellites or go and maybe poke somebody else's satellite. These are all defense capabilities that MDA Space produces. So as Canada increases its defense spend, space is one of these strong areas where Canada has an extremely strong, over 55-year proven defense industrial base capability that we have the opportunity now to sell increased volumes of goods and services into our Department of National Defense for Canada's security and sovereignty, but also for Canada's contribution to allied relevant defense capability.
Sounds like an upward trajectory for your company, but at the same time, there's always losses when there's wins, and MDA Space recently lost the EchoStar deal. That was just last month. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how big of a hit was that?
Yeah, well, we won the EchoStar deal after 18 months of competition, but it was taken away from us as they decided to not go ahead with their project and instead sell their spectrum, their radio frequency spectrum rights to SpaceX. And so SpaceX is going to provide that service to the United States. That was obviously a large deal. It was about a $1.3 $8 billion Canadian deal. So it's never good to lose that kind of order in your order book. But we have a really strong pipeline. We have an over $20 billion pipeline of opportunities we're pursuing, over $13 billion of which are in space network opportunities. So we carry on. So that deal occurred. It's really important that we continue to work with Canada on our networks here, as you mentioned, including our defense networks here in Canada. And then we have a large international pipeline of commercial partners where we can deliver our Aurora, world-leading digital satellite, MDA Aurora, to those commercial and government partners around the world. So we continue on with that, and we have really good opportunities here over the next year or two.
Mike Greenley, CEO of MDA Space.